Religion is a way of life that describes the duties and relations of man to his God. Adherents of all religions join in the belief that man's coming into the world necessarily brought relation with God. Man in his primitive state sought ways of overcoming his environment, the fire of the sky, the wrath of the sea, the fury of the winds, and the heat of the desert, which he tried to control or appease. Some primitive men attempted to curb such forces with magic. Others turned to a kind of nature worship. As time passed, man tried to invoke the aid of the primeval forces. Eventually, in most religions, man associated these forces with some one great spirit or God. Through the ages, different religions have arisen and some have declined. 5 of the great religions endure and continue to guide millions upon millions of people the world over. These 5 had their beginnings in southwestern Asia. It was here that Hinduism developed identity. Most recently, Islam has developed. On the subcontinent we call India, the religion of the Aborigines was a primitive form of nature worship. Then, many centuries ago, Vedic invaders broke through the mountain passes, bringing with them the seeds of still another primitive religion. Out of these beginnings, Hinduism developed. Vishnu, Shiva, and Brahma were the deities that eventually became most revered. Spiritual perfection for the Hindu became a state of mind rather than a place. It is often called nirvana. According to the Upanishads, a man may have to live many lives before he attains nirvana. This is known as the transmigration of souls, or reincarnation. The means of attaining nirvana are stated in the Bhagavad Gita. Hindus believe that animals are the outward forms of souls, just as man embodies a soul within himself. But only man can achieve nirvana. Rebirth as a pig or other lowly animal is believed to be the lot of a man whose conduct has been unworthy. A well-conducted life overcomes strife and desire and leads to nirvana. Brahmins like this Brahmin priest expound the principles of the Hindu religion. But ordinarily, the Hindu religion is not a group activity. Essentially, it is a personal religion. Shrines are found throughout the land. People of all types pause to honor the gods of their choice. Hinduism is a tolerant religion. Nearly 26 centuries ago, religious dissension began developing in Hinduism, and heretical religions sprang up. Today, Hinduism is largely confined to the subcontinent of India. But one of its heretical religions, called Buddhism, has spread widely in the Far East. Buddhism was founded by Gautama, a prince of a Hindu kingdom in the valley of the Ganges. Gautama was born nearly 26 centuries ago. At an early age, Gautama became dissatisfied with a life of princely pleasure and forsook his palace to seek the deeper meaning of life. Finally, he arrived at this spot near Gaya, India. Here beneath a bo tree, legend tells us he received a great religious awakening and became the serene and peaceful Buddha. The sublime truths of Buddhism were revealed to him. These truths are given in the scriptures of Buddhism, called the Britannica. It is written that suffering ceases by overcoming ignorance. This is enlightenment, which is called nirvana. Within 1,000 years after the death of Gautama, Buddhism had reached the height of its development and begun to decline in the land of its origin. But it spread into Burma, Thailand, Indochina, and Ceylon. And as Northern Buddhism, it developed in Tibet, China, Korea, and Japan, where today it numbers many millions of adherents. To understand Judaism, the first great religion founded on a belief in one God, returned to Arabia. Centuries ago, the Hebrew people were leading the lives of nomads in the desert. Fringing part of the desert to the north was a particularly fertile region known as the Fertile Crescent. One of the tribes in the nearby desert was led by Abraham, the first of the so-called patriarchs of Israel. Moving around the Fertile Crescent, the tribe of Abraham finally entered the land of Canaan. But lean years and famine overtook them, and they pushed on into Egypt. They lived a pastoral life until one of the pharaohs ended their freedom. Then they were forced to labor as slaves on the pyramids. Now arose Moses, one of the great leaders of all times. Fired with zeal to free his brethren, he successfully led them out of Egypt. At Mount Sinai, Moses solemnly committed his people to a covenant with the one and only God. The 10 Commandments came into being, as did the Torah, the sacred Hebrew scriptures. This is part of an ancient sheepskin manuscript written in Hebrew. As directed by their God, the Jews constructed the great Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem. This temple became the center of Judaism. Jews from all the land journeyed to this temple, but this was not to last. Revolution came, and the kingdom split in two. In the following centuries, invaders repeatedly sought to deprive the Jews of land and liberty. Finally, the temple was destroyed for the second time, and within the succeeding century, the Jews were dispersed to other lands. Today, in whatever land, the synagogue is the place of worship for the Jews. Within a holy ark in the synagogue rests the Torah. From a stand in the synagogue are read the prayers that echo the words of the 10 Commandments. In spirit, the commandments say, "What is hateful unto thyself, do not unto thy fellow man," and "Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself." As part of their covenant with Jehovah, the Jews have looked for the coming of the Messiah, who would restore the kingdom of Israel and banish evil. The cross of Christianity signifies an event closely related to this aspect of Judaism. Jesus, who was to become the Christ, was born in Bethlehem in the year from which the modern calendar is dated. Christians believe that Jesus is the Son of the eternal God, the promised Messiah of Judaism. Jesus preached a simple doctrine of goodness and adherence to the 10 Commandments. 12 disciples followed him through the years of his public ministry. Some of these disciples continued to spread his teachings after his death. The years of public ministry for Jesus came to an end in Jerusalem. It was there that he was accused of endangering the safety of the Jewish state and put to death by order of Pontius Pilate, the Roman procurator in Jerusalem. Those who accepted the teachings of Christ became known as Christians. His teachings are recorded in the scriptures of the New Testament, and the cross has become the symbol of Christianity. The Christian church first developed in Jerusalem. Gradually, Christianity spread. In the 4th century, the pagan Roman Empire became Christian. Rome became the center of Western Christianity. A basic belief of the Roman Catholic Church in Rome holds that the Pope, the Bishop of Rome, is the successor of the Apostle Peter and the divinely appointed head of the church. In the eastern part of the empire, Constantinople became the center of Christianity. Differences between Christians in the east and in the west became more and more pronounced until in the 11th century, a separation formally took place. Within the Eastern Orthodox Catholic Church, Serbian, Greek, Russian, and other national churches developed. The rituals and doctrines of all Orthodox Catholic churches are in essence the same. Orthodox Christianity relies upon Holy Scripture and Holy Tradition. This is a part of the divine liturgy, the highest act of devotion of the Orthodox Church. In this solemn reliving of the life of the Lord, the Holy Eucharist is offered up by the priest as a sacrifice for the remission of sin. Roman Catholic Christianity centers its doctrines on Holy Scripture and Holy Tradition. In part, this is portrayed by the 7 sacraments. Among these sacraments, the most sacred is the Holy Eucharist and the sacrifice of the Mass. The sacrifice of the Mass is a reenactment of the Last Supper attended by Christ and his disciples, and a continuation of the sacrifice by Christ on Calvary, the scene of his crucifixion. Under the leadership of men like Martin Luther, a movement away from the Catholic Church developed during the 16th century. The upheaval that followed is called the Reformation. The Reformation ushered in the Protestant Church. Protestantism ranges from traditionalism to fundamental simplicity. Always, the preaching of the Word is the core of Protestant worship. Usually, an ordained pastor or minister delivers the sermon, but interpreting the message is the privilege and duty of each individual. The Holy Bible contains the story and teachings of Jesus and the history of the early church, as well as the earlier Jewish scriptures. As in Judaism, Catholicism, and other religions, youth plays an important part in the religious life of the church. Ceremonies vary in form among the different Protestant churches, but all of the churches observe certain ceremonies or ordinances, such as baptism and communion. In some of the churches, infants may be dedicated, but baptism is reserved for older children and adults. Christianity, in its different forms, has spread to many parts of the world, but only part of the world has become predominantly Christian. For the third great religion based on a belief in one God, we go back to the late years of the 6th century. Its founder, Mohammed, was born in Mecca. It was Mohammed who proclaimed in the marketplaces of Mecca that Allah, the one God, had commanded him to wipe out the worship of idols. But Mohammed's doctrines were rejected. He was forced to flee to the neighboring city of Medina. Soon, Mohammed had converted the people of Medina. Later, he converted Mecca. In the next century, the spread of Islam, the religion Mohammed advocated, was almost incredibly rapid. Islam teaches a social, political, economic, and religious way of life. The Quran is the sacred scripture of Islam that contains the revelations of Allah to Mohammed. It is the living heart of the Arabic language. The wording in this ancient Quran is exactly like every modern copy. From prayer towers throughout the land, the call to prayer goes forth to the faithful 5 times a day. Every true Muslim, wherever he may be, turns his face toward Mecca to express his praise to God. In the mosques, Friday is the sacred day of public prayer. The faithful face the prayer niche, which indicates the direction to Mecca, the holy city, birthplace of Mohammed. There is no priesthood because the Quran directs that no one shall come between man and God. A non-clerical imam leads the worship. Man, in his search for an explanation of the mystery of life, has made the population of the world predominantly religious. Each of the different religions that has arisen has contributed enormously to the spiritual life of its adherents. Among the many contributions of religion are the holy writings that join in proclaiming the basic laws of the good life. Despite inevitable human failings, religion continues to point out a way of life by showing how man can best relate himself to the unseen God and to the purposes of God in order to build the fellowship of man according to the divine will.